I'm not someone easily frightened by horror movies, but Alien is one of the few that to this day is hard to watch, especially alone and especially at night. When it was released in 1979, it caused near pandemonium at screenings all over the world.
People were getting up and leaving the theater and going out and barfing in the lobby.
They were terrified. They'd never seen a movie like this. It just came at them, relentless claustrophobia. And the power of this movie is any horror film, you get inside the psychology of fear, and those are inherent certain amount of things that are in people, things growing inside you, and the claustrophobia of a setting where you're enclosed and can't get out of.
You really felt like you were right there with the characters along those creepy, dark corridors, where anything could be lurking in the shadows. And yet, somehow, you still couldn't look away. Ridley Scott was able to lull you into a sense of hypnotized fascination with the events of the movie. This is accomplished in several clever ways. In the initial opening sequences, the camera acts almost as a patient tour guide, gliding slowly, methodically, effortlessly through the Nostromo corridors. And everything is quiet, just the low drumming hum of the craft's engine. But then Jerry Goldsmith's score becomes almost like an inviting lullaby. Just about every great horror film has a great cast, and Alien is no exception. Wonderful actors who take their roles seriously, and as a result, imbue the characters with a kind of documentary realism you normally don't see in these kinds of monster flicks. There are no showy actor moments. No one is chewing scenery or mugging for the camera. The actors instead seem to be reacting instead of acting. There is an improvisatory, laid-back, casual nature to the performances that work to lull you into believing this reality actually existed somewhere. This documentary-like realism is at the heart of why Scott's movie is so damn effective at scaring the shit out of people. And even though it's science fiction, nothing about this movie seems fantastical. Every piece of the Nostromo feels designed around the principles of real space travel. Everything feels practical and grounded. Nothing seems too weird or science fiction-y. And everything has a grit and grime to it that makes the surroundings feel lived in. These feel like real, burned-out space trucker veterans who've done these kinds of missions many times. And the performances subtly foreshadow certain things, like this moment where Lambert smokes a cigarette in the corner, watching the other crew members plan the trek to the alien ship. She never says a word, but her expression, mannerisms, and where the camera is placed in relation to her and the other crew all hint that she is not only worried about what might be out there, but that her fate has already been sealed. The hyper-realism of the performances also translates to the crew's discovery of the wrecked alien ship. When they arrive, it has the same slow, creepy, methodical exactness of the opening Nostromo sequences. We feel like we're discovering something right along with the crew. This opens up the audience to receiving every terrifying intentions that the filmmakers have to offer. The xenomorph is so alien, so disturbing and threatening. It really does feel necessary to create an atmosphere in which the discovery of such a creature felt as much like an archaeological find as it did a standard monster movie. Their trek begins to introduce H.R. Giger's mind-bending design elements. These designs, by the Swiss artist, are as beautiful as they are threatening and foreboding. They also contain some pretty heavy psychosexual undertones. Orifices that resemble vaginas, eggs scattered about, a very definite action of impregnation with the facehugger and penetrating birth of the chestburster, and the fact that it comes out of a male, further creating an atmosphere that just feels wrong. The fully grown xenomorph, with its phallic-like head that almost resembles a giant erect penis, its mouth punching through its victims, as if mimicking a violent rape. These bizarre and heavily subconscious elements are a huge part of what make the alien so terrifying. It wasn't just its appearance, it was its entire function as an organism. Its life cycle and process of survival and procreation mimicked that of humans, but in a twisted, surreal, and violent exaggeration that put people in a state of shock. And shock is exactly what happened to audiences who first saw the chestburster scene. The movie really pivots on this scene and becomes something else. The hyper-realistic documentary-like approach by Scott paid off in spades. The scene is so incredibly shocking that fear almost becomes an afterthought, and like a traumatized victim, it takes a while for the implications of what just happened to fully sink into the audience. Scott uses his time wisely to keep the xenomorph hidden, implying its presence by way of trackers the characters use to try and locate it. And since the ship has already been established as large, dark, and uninviting, the minds of the audience do all the work in imagining the worst possible scenarios. In standard movie monster fashion, the crew is picked off one by one, but these are no ordinary deaths. They carry with them the tone of the chestburster scene, in which the audience is now on edge, perhaps anticipating something just as shocking. But more deeply, if such a small creature could do such devastating damage to the human body, what is a full-size adult capable of? In the film's penultimate roller coaster sequence, as Ripley, the lone survivor, desperately tries to get off the ship without becoming another victim, the terror is at its absolute height. These few minutes are some of the scariest in horror movie history, not only as the result of all the previous excellent world building and tonal construction by Ridley Scott, but also because of a key scene that preceded. The particulars of the xenomorph's nature are laid out in full by Ash, having gone through his own nightmarish rampage moments earlier. His twisted, violent destruction is another example of how this movie treats the human body with a kind of inverse transformation. Cain giving birth to a baby creature, and now Ash spewing what looks like mother's milk. Ash's almost poetic description of the xenomorph's nature elevates the creature to a level that makes Ripley's chances seem all the more dire. We're not only terrified of what she has to face, we're rooting for her to survive it. Ripley's survival is pretty much all the audience has at this point in the way of hope or reassurance. As the film has been so traumatic, we want some kind of happy ending, no matter how small. The film does a clever bit of fake-out, the xenomorph having climbed aboard Ripley's lifeboat. You couldn't create any more tension if you tried. She's stuck in a small room with what, for all intents and purposes, is a superior creature, whose terrifying appearance has now been seared into the minds of the audience. And even after being blown out of the airlock, the xenomorph's intelligent design keep the film from ending and giving the audience a break. It really does live up to Ash's speech and proves itself as one of the most terrifying and effective monster creations in cinema history. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the like and subscribe button, as I'll be posting more content in the future. Thanks for watching.